The crew on MAC249 was on a round-trip flight from New Zealand to McMurdo Station, Antarctica. After landing their C-141 Starlifter on the snow and ice-covered runway, the crew experienced an extra rough ride. Post-flight inspection revealed a shattered taxi light and a broken brake line. With no en route maintenance available, the crew capped the line and refilled the number 2 hydraulic system. 2 hours later, with 90,000 pounds of fuel and 12 passengers aboard, MAC249 prepared for the return trip back to New Zealand.
Inflate the vest after you depart the aircraft.
Approach the ice. Angle the tack the ice. Take off light.
Checked.
Line check, please.
MAC 249.
Wind 280 at 10, clear for takeoff.
MAC 249, cleared for takeoff.
Okay, crew, let's get this thing off the ice. Standing O up, checking 70. 1.95.
Go.
Gear up.
Gear up.
Within seconds after takeoff, the co-pilot realized something had gone wrong.
Pilot, looks like we have a problem with the gear. Right main gear showing unsafe.
MAC 249, it appears you've lost your starboard wheels. They're hanging.
Okay, don't raise the gear. 249, roger.
Pilot engineer, I told the scanner to go back and take a look at all the gear. He's on his way back there right now.
Thanks, engineer. Flaps up.
Flaps up.
Okay, co-pilot's aircraft. Keep the airspeed below 235 knots and climb us to 3,000 feet. And fly runway heading.
Roger. Co-pilot's airplane.
Nice tower, MAC 249er.
Go ahead, MAC 249.
I'd like to fly by the tower and have you look at our landing gear.
249, roger. Enter a right downwind.
Okay, let's make a right turn back toward the airfield.
Okay, clear right.
Clear right. Scanner, pilot.
Pilot, this is scanner, go ahead.
Any sign of damage down there?
Sir, the right gear is hanging down a lot further than the left gear. It's hard to tell exactly what the condition of the gear is. This inspection window's covered with a lot of snow and ice.
Ice tower, MAC 249 downwind.
Ice tower, how does the right gear look?
MAC 249, it appears your right gear is much lower than your left gear. It appears to just be hanging by some hydraulic lines. It looks pretty bad. MAC 249, what are your intentions?
MAC 249, say your intentions.
MAC249 was faced with a unique problem that would require the combined knowledge and coordination of many individuals if they were to land safely. Assuming you were a member of MAC249, what would you do? First, you would define the problem. A problem well defined is a problem half solved. What is the problem? What are some factors bearing on the problem? Second, you would gather information. Begin collecting information from all sources available.
Tower, we keep advised on that. Engineer, any suggestions?
Scanner engineer, is there a lot of damage down there? Can we retract the gear?
I don't think we should retract the gear, engineer. There's obviously some damage to the right main gear. I can't tell the exact position of the gear because of the way it's hanging.
Pilot, if we fly back to Christchurch with the gear down, our crew's airspeed and altitude are going to be restricted.
The crew realized that if they were to make it back to New Zealand, they would have to climb to an optimum flight level they could maintain, yet not exceed the limitations on the landing gear.
Okay. Co-pilot, let's at least start getting this thing headed toward New Zealand while we figure this out.
Pilot engineer, our Mach airspeed limits intersect at flight level 230.
Good. Okay, co-pilot, let's start a climb to flight level 230 and keep the speed below 235 knots.
Okay. NRT 195.
Navigator pilot, check our range at that flight level and see if we can make it to Christchurch.
Copy, pilot, stand by.
The navigator had a challenging problem. He needed to calculate the chances of getting to New Zealand. Without any gear-down fuel consumption charts available, it was nearly impossible for him to determine for certain if they could make it. Meanwhile, the pilot tried to initiate a conference skyhook with the 22nd Air Force to gather more information on how best to deal with their problem. Because of their remote location, however, the crew was unable to establish HF radio contact for a conference skyhook. Fortunately, though, they were able to relay through another C-141 aircraft, MAC249, that had taken off from McMurdo 2 hours ahead of them. MAC249 described their problem and used MAC403 to pass the information on to MAC Stan Eval and Lockheed technical representatives on the ground. With nightfall now upon them, the crew assessed their situation 1 hour after leveling off at flight level 230.
Nav, how do you like this fuel flow? Can we make it to Christchurch?
Well, pilot, right now I can't tell. I don't have any fuel consumption charts for gear down, and it looks like we're going to have to climb if we want to make it to Christchurch.
Yeah, but climbing, pilot, would mean we'd overspeed the gear.
What choice do we have?
Engineer, how much gas do we have?
We've got 77.2.
Okay, well, we're burning about 14 an hour right now. Nav, how long will it take us to get to Christchurch at this ground speed?
Well, pilot, we're about 1,900 miles out now. Figure another 5 hours at cruise before descent, and at that rate, we'll land with about 4,000 pounds, and that's with no wind.
Pilot, engineer, we could retract the left main and nose gear, leaving the right damaged gear down. It might improve our fuel consumption problem by getting rid of some of the drag out there.
Sounds good. Okay, engineer, you and the scanner work on retracting the left main and the nose gear.
While the engineer prepared to depressurize the aircraft, the loadmaster briefed the passengers and helped them don their oxygen masks. Once depressurized, the scanner secured the right gear, and the crew retracted the left main gear and nose gear, leaving the damaged right gear extended. The engineer then began to repressurize the aircraft.
Gear is up. Okay, load. We're below 10,000 feet. We can all come off oxygen.
Engineer, that fuel flow still looks pretty high.
Yes, sir. I think we should climb in order to increase our chances of reaching New Zealand.
I concur, pilot. We can't make it at this altitude. These headwinds are killing us, not to mention the fuel flow.
Okay, then it's decided. Co-pilot, give MAC403 a call and advise them of our intentions to climb to a higher altitude, even though we know it's going to overspeed the right gear.
Okay.
Engineer, what altitude can we climb to?
We can climb to flight level 300.
Okay. McMurdo, MAC59er 249er, requesting a climb to flight level 300. Go ahead.
MAC59er 249er, climb and maintain flight level 300. Report when reaching.
Roger, roger. MAC249er departing 230 for 300 at this time. Will report reaching.
MAC249, MAC403. Lockheed suggests you maintain the highest Mach possible without losing controllability.
MAC249, thanks. McMurdo, MAC59 249, out of flight level 230 for flight level 300.
Co-pilot, I want you to gradually increase the Mach speed as we climb.
Okay. And pilot, looks like we're picking up some buffer at about 0.63. How about if I climb at about 6.2?
Okay, sounds good.
Looks like the winds are shifting in our favor up here, and with this present fuel flow, I estimate we can reach at least one of the two airfields in southern New Zealand. One of them is Invercargill. It has a 5,600-foot runway. The other one is Dunedin. It has a 5,610-foot runway. And if we climb a little bit later on, I'm certain we'll make at least one of those airfields and possibly even Christchurch. I'll keep you posted, pilot.
Well, thanks for the good news, Nav. Okay, crew, let's start planning this landing.
The crew of MAC249 had to consider how to land safely with minimal damage to plane and crew. This could probably be accomplished a number of different ways. How would you approach this problem? Make an initial statement. State the options available to the crew. For example, Based on all the information gathered, let's go with this option. Any problems with that, crew? Then, resolve conflicts. Defend and test the initial statement. Explain to those with conflict why the initial statement is the correct course of action. This not only tests the course of action, but also reminds everyone involved that they are an integral part of the decision and crew. A few hours later, after climbing again to flight level 330, the crew analyzed their options for landing their crippled aircraft safely.
Roger, roger. Thanks, 403. And thank the guys at Travis for all their help. Tell them we'll give them a call when we get on the ground. Hopefully we'll be calling from Christchurch. Okay, so the problem now is, how do we configure this aircraft for what could amount to a crash landing?
Sir, the scanner and I have come up with 4 possible solutions to the problem. First, we could land with all the gear down. Second, we could land with only the main gear down. Third, we could land with the nose gear down and the right main gear down. And finally, we could land with only the right main gear down.
Pilot scanner, in all of these plans, we leave the right gear down and pinned.
Are there any other possibilities to consider?
No, I think any attempt to retract that right gear could result in even more problems. Maybe even losing that number 2 hydraulic system. That's right. That's why we think it's best not to retract the gear at all.
Okay, are there any other possible alternatives? Good enough. Let's discuss each one of these plans. Of course, the big question is, will the right gear separate after we land? Now, the last plan we discussed was having all the gear retracted except for the right main.
Well, we don't know whether the right gear will separate on landing. But either way, we could lose directional control and skid off the runway. I agree.
Okay, the first approach, all the gear down.
This approach would minimize the impact damage to the fuselage, since we can use all the gear to absorb the touchdown.
Plus, you'll have nose wheel steering for directional control.
Yeah, and I could initially land on the left main before I put weight on the right.
The only problem is, what happens if the right gear separates? We wouldn't drag a wingtip when we land, but we could drag number 4 engine pod.
That's possible. Okay, let's consider the other configurations, and we'll come back to that one later.
The second option is main gear down, nose gear retracted. We don't see any advantage in this configuration.
No, we'll still have directional control problems, whether we keep the gear or lose it. And finally, nose gear down, right gear down. If we lose the right gear, we'll skid wings level and still have nose gear steering for directional control. But if the right gear stays, we'll drag number 1 engine pod and possibly skid off the side of the runway.
Remember, pilot, the tower said that the gear was just hanging by hydraulic lines. It might just rip off when you start your flare. In that case, you could land with the wings level, and you wouldn't have to worry about dragging an engine pod.
But that's right. That is possible.
Engineer, what do you think?
That is possible. If the right gear separates before we actually touch down, I'd rather slide wings level than drag an outboard engine down the runway.
I agree, sir. I just wish we knew what was going to happen to the right gear as we land.
Okay, since it seems like that right main will probably separate before the fuselage strikes the runway, I think we ought to land nose gear down, left main up. That way we could maintain wings level if the right main does separate.
I'll buy that. And you'll still have nose wheel steering for directional control.
I'll go along with that plan, but I want to scan the gear before we make our approach to see if we can tell what's going to happen when we land.
You bet. That's an excellent idea. I'll buy that. Okay, so we reject the first plan, the all gear down configuration, because we expect to lose the right gear when we land.
Yes, sir.
Sounds like a plan. Engineer, let's review the checklists we need to consider.
With a plan of attack visualized, the crew began to review normal and emergency checklist procedures that would apply to their unique situation.
Good job, crew. Well, I guess we're as ready as we'll ever be. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody unsure about their tasks or responsibilities? Good.
Pilot Nav,
Go ahead.
got some good news for you. I calculate we can make Christchurch with about 8,000 pounds on board. That shows about 225 miles out right now.
Okay, crew, then we're going to land this thing at Christchurch. Co-pilot, let's start an en route descent. We're clear down to 7,000 feet.
Out of 330 for 7,000.
Early in the descent, the engineer began to depressurize the aircraft to allow the scanner to open the gear inspection window and get one last scan of the damaged gear before landing.
We're depressurized. Scanner, let's take a good look at that right gear.
Pilot scanner. The gear piston appears to be separated from the cylinder assembly. The gear truck is still attached to the aircraft by the scissors. The gear truck is almost laying on its side. I can see the well caps.
Does it look like we're going to lose it at touchdown?
I think it'll stay with us for part of the landing roll.
I'm going to give Christchurch a call and update them on our situation. Christchurch Tower, MAC249, how do you read?
Go ahead, MAC249. This is Christchurch.
We've just finished scanning the landing gear and it doesn't look good. There's major damage to the strut and the only thing that appears to be holding it on the aircraft is the scissors. I do not know if it'll remain on the aircraft during landing roll. Please advise 22nd and see if they have any more suggestions.
Stand by, MAC249.
After scanning the gear a final time in detail, the crew reevaluated their initial plan to land with the left main gear retracted and the nose gear down. If the right gear will not separate on landing, would this configuration be the safest one? Are there any other factors to consider? Sometimes when new evidence is introduced, the whole problem-solving process must be opened up again. So, fight for feedback. For example, are we going about this the right way? Have we missed anything? Have we explored all avenues, possibilities, alternatives? Then, make decisions. Implement your plan with the option of modifying it or reopening the process if new evidence is introduced to the situation. To ensure the decision made on the final landing configuration was the best one, the pilot considered feedback from the ground.
MAC249, this is Christchurch. Sir, we've been talking to 22nd Air Force and Lockheed. They recommend you consider landing with the nose gear and left main gear down. They suggest that you pin the nose gear but do not pin the left gear. This will give you the option of retracting the left main gear if you experience difficulty maintaining directional control on landing. They also suggest that you use aileron to keep the weight of the right main gear as long as possible. Did you copy all that, MAC249?
Copy all, Christchurch. We'll plan on landing as you suggested. Please alert the fire trucks and thank you for your help.
No problem, MAC249. We'll have all the emergency equipment ready for your arrival, and the best of luck, mate. MAC249, you're cleared ILS approach runway 20. Wind is 210 at 10, and you're cleared to land.
Roger, MAC249er, clear to land.
Okay, crew, we're going to proceed with the original plan. We'll land with all the gear down, but we'll only pin the nose gear.
Engineer copies. Scanner, let's pin that nose gear.
Now, co-pilot, if I have directional control problems on landing, I want you to retract the left main on my command.
With all information gathered, options discussed, conflicts resolved, and feedback reviewed, the problem-solving process finally drew to a close, and MAC249 began its slow descent to runway 20. The C-141 Starlifter landed just left of centerline, approximately 800 feet from threshold, and the right gear separated from the aircraft immediately. Simultaneously, the right wingtip and number 4 engine pod impacted the runway. The aircraft veered to the right and slid to a halt at the 4,000 feet remaining point. The right wingtip came to rest on the grass 23 feet from the right edge of the runway. The right main gear bogie stopped about 100 yards behind the aircraft, just off the right side of the runway. The crew and passengers egressed expeditiously and without incident. Effective cockpit operation in both routine and emergency situations can be enhanced by sound integration of human effort and available resources. The crew of MAC249 tackled an extremely complex problem with effective air-crew coordination. They handled it successfully. Will you?